Hey everybody, it's Sandy and welcome back to my channel dedicated to helping you advocate for your own health one topic at a time. So I'm driving in the car again, guys, so I'm not going to be looking at the camera so much, but I'm anticipating arriving where I need to be a little bit early, so that that's actually just going to be in a minute or two here, I hope, and then I can park, and not that you can tell, right, with the giant sunglasses. But I had a thought kind of rattling around in my head about something that I listened to in recent days, and I wanted to talk about it like before I kind of lost my passion for it, maybe, or well, I've got it in my head and fresh. I wanted to make a video, and it's a little bit of a divergence from my channel and maybe a little closer to my older content, which was kind of the basis for starting my channel, which is that I have an immense interest in all things nutrition and all things health. COVID kind of came along and maybe hijacked my channel a little bit, or I veered off. I can't blame anybody or anything. But I'm very interested in nutrition, and I'm going to give a plug to another content creator, which I guess I rarely do. But there is a channel here on YouTube called Nutrition Made Simple, and its creator is Gil Carvalho. He's an MD PhD. I think he's out in California. And I just love the channel for a couple of reasons. One is that he just isn't interested in an agenda. He doesn't have any particular agenda. He presents things. He lets the facts kind of speak for themselves. He peels apart conclusions in what I consider sort of pop research, where you'll read about some correlation like, oh, more people who eat breakfast live longer, or something really broad like that, and he'll pick things apart so that you can see the obvious confounders and how you can't really determine cause based on certain things that are associated with one another. He also delves deep into some of the nutritional, like all different kinds of nutritional approaches. Like he'll do a deep dive into cholesterol issues and into the veganism and all different kinds of diets. So I really like that. He doesn't start with an agenda and like make it his business to find facts that support it and then present those. So I really like that. Oh my goodness, I'm looking for a parking space here. Oh wait, maybe I'm gonna get lucky. Okay. Anyway, so I really love that about his channel. The other thing I really like is sort of like my channel. And I guess I don't have very much light here, but I'm gonna live with it. I don't mean to compare myself to him, because his channel is all research, MD, PhD all the time. And while I try to be an educational type channel, it's kind of education science meets vlog, right? I don't know really where I fit. His is just all scientific discussion. But one thing that he does just like I do is he does not involve himself in any kind of salesy anything. He doesn't do affiliate links. He doesn't sell things. He's had offers of sponsorship for his videos. He declines every one of them. I've never mentioned this, but I, by the way, have too. I've had lots and lots of offers of contracts to present something or another, or to have a video sponsored, and I just say no to everything. I just think it can't help but bias the information. So I really like that Nutrition Made Simple is just so objective and transparent. So anyway, he interviewed somebody who really resonated with me. It's somebody, I wish I remembered the guy's name. He's a PhD in nutrition, and he's done so many clinical trials of, putting people on all different kinds of diets for, long periods of time. And he just has a real wide view. And he brought up a concept that really resonated with me, because it's kind of a conclusion I've come to myself, and I hadn't articulated it just this way. And that's what I want to get to. Sorry, it's like a long intro, right? But he was talking about all these different diets out there on the internet, and there's so much noise on the internet. Like if you look, you try to find like the best diet that's going to work, not necessarily for weight loss, but for overall health. And by the way, I think there's too much focus on the former and not so much the latter. And I think that's the reason we have a lot of people who've lost a lot of weight many, many times, only, to gain it back and have to lose it again. That's another story. But, if you think about it, the loud arguing over, no, not any more of this. This is what you should do, and you should ignore that, and that's what you should do, and that's what you shouldn't do anymore. And it's really kind of the fringe. It's just very loud. And there are a few core principles he talked about, and I've come to this conclusion myself, that if, really almost anybody out there talking about improving diet can agree on certain core principles, and if we all stuck to those, we'd all probably be eating healthier and better. Now, most of you have been following me for a long time know that I do fast, and he didn't talk anything about timing or eating or fasting, and I've been fasting, you know, intermittent fasting, time restricted eating for well over a decade. I've lost track. It's just kind of fits my natural biorhythm, and that's what I do. But this is really about the food that you're eating during the time that you're eating, so regardless of that. And there were these core principles, and one of them was, okay, more plant-based, less animal-based. Didn't mean nothing animal, all plant. Let's just say more plant, less animal. Another one was more vegetables. Another one was less sugar. Now, he didn't say no sugar, zero sugar. He said less sugar. And the other one was less processed or highly processed foods. Now, if you think about it, almost anybody who's out there talking, like whether they're advocating a vegan diet or advocating a keto diet, or any number of things, you know, plant-based diet or a low saturated fat diet or whatever it might be, high fiber diet, those four principles kind of serve as the underpinnings to any of these diets, as different as they are. And that's why I'm saying it so resonated with me, because I've kind of come to that conclusion myself. I've dabbled in some of the others, some of the extremes. I had a particularly disappointing experience dabbling in keto. And he did start talking about some of the problems with some of the extreme. I'm not saying that a keto diet is extreme, nobody yell at me. I'm not saying a vegan diet is extreme, nobody yell at me. But when we're just looking at these core principles, let's just call some of these, like vegan, keto, whatever, let's call them more fringe, because again, they encompass these same core principles I just talked about, or they don't have to. I mean, you can be on a vegan diet and drink Mountain Dew all day long, but you know, they can incorporate those four principles. But then if you're going to get any more committed to a particular diet, let's just call that the fringe, for lack of a better word. So let's say veganism as fringe example one. Okay, so no dairy. All right, I mean, maybe, but is dairy like ice cream or cheddar cheese the same as home fermented plain unsweetened yogurt or kefir? Probably not. What about the keto group that says, okay, absolutely no carbs? Or let's even take a better example, a more extreme example, no sugars. So that means no fruit, no, okay, so are we saying that some honeydew melon is the same as a pack of Skittles? Yeah, probably not. So you see where I'm going here? You see where he was going? And I just thought it was such a good way to put it, that if you could stick to this core, you know, after that, there's all different things that work for different people, and there's a lot of individual variation and nuance that might be related to different people's metabolism, different people's choices, what they're going to stick to. You know, and he even brings up, as do some guests on Gil Carvalho's channel, some things that I've seen Gil Carvalho dispute in other videos. And I think that's great, because that's another thing that just bolsters this issue, where he's transparent and he's not just looking for something that supports his own agenda. And by the way, I do listen to some content creators who do have their own agendas, and they have no shame about it. You know, one of them, I really like, a gastroenterologist by the name of Will Bolshewitz, who's starting to have a pretty strong presence on social media, and he's a big proponent of a vegan diet. I don't go as far as he does because of the reasons I just stated. I don't know that, I mean, I don't eat a lot of dairy. I don't tend to gravitate toward it because I don't like it. But I don't think that, you know, a whole bunch of cheddar cheese or a whole lot of, you know, cheese on pizza is really the same as home fermented kefir or yogurt. Those are not the same thing. So to me, it's worth some of the cost of, you know, if I don't have a particular problem with dairy, I'm going to have some of that. Same thing with some of the people who are big proponents of keto diets. They do no grain. Okay, Frosted Flakes are not the same as, you know, homemade buckwheat or something, you know, that's got a lot of fiber in it. So I think there's some middle ground with all these, and that's kind of where I like to stick. And it doesn't mean I discount the content creators who are a little more extreme, because I can still learn from them. Like Will Bolshewitz, I still learn a lot about some of the benefits of fiber and different kinds of fiber and how they influence the gut microbiome. So I just wanted to bring this up and talk about it. And I know in the past we've talked about intermittent fasting on my channel, and we've got a little bit of a conversation going about it sometimes in the Facebook group, and I'm wondering where you guys are on some of this issue about diet. I hate to say everything in moderation because I actually don't believe that. I mean, there are some things that are really bad for you. Do I think it's going to be particularly harmful if you decide that you're going to have some potato chips and you're generally very healthy and metabolically and everything else? And no, but I don't think there's any reason that you need that, and I don't think it's better for you to have that in moderation. It's probably better to not have it, but so I don't like the term everything in moderation, but I do like the term, core principles, and sticking to these core principles and then kind of varying from there and seeing what works for you. I do like to eat salmon. I even occasionally like to eat some chicken. I've also recently seen a video on Gil Carvalho's channel where he interviewed somebody who studies protein metabolism and found that the elderly population in the United States is largely deficient somewhat in protein, and that vegetarian sources of protein are probably not efficient enough for them, and so maybe for certain groups it's actually better than not to incorporate some animal protein there. When you put all this stuff together, you find it's not like all distilled down into one simple answer. You have to have the tolerance for some nuance. I'm going to tell you about one thing that I heard like Will Bolshewitz say on his channel that I really objected to, and I almost, he was actually being interviewed on somebody else's channel, but I almost wrote a comment and I decided it wasn't worth my time. He's a real proponent of veganism. Again, fine, all the more power to him. I think a vegan diet can be great, but this is the kind of thing I don't like. He said something like, calorie for calorie, there's more protein in, I think he said lettuce, some kind of green leafy, than there is in steak. Okay. Do I think it's a good idea to eat a bunch of steak? No. Calorie for calorie. So in 700 calories worth of steak, which is very eatable, you don't have as much protein as if you ate 700 calories worth of lettuce. How much lettuce would you have to eat to get 700 calories? You bet like a whole big bag of lettuce is 30 calories, right? I mean, it's a ridiculous statistic to spew out, and it's useless. So I do agree with Gil Carvalho's guest the other day that there's a lot of the debate out there is just the fringe noise. It's just loud. It's small, but it's loud. And if we could all adhere to some core principles and vary from there, some days I feel like eating a little more of this. Sometimes I feel like eating a little less of that. Do I choose to have salmon in my diet? Some people say, well, I don't want any saturated fat, and salmon, even though it's high in omega-3s, has a lot of saturated fat. If you don't have any problem with the saturated fat, but maybe for some reason you feel like the omega-3 is something that you need for yourself for some reason, then or you just like salmon and you don't have any reason to avoid it. I think it's got a lot of good things about it. So I personally do eat salmon. There's all kinds of trade-offs like this that we're making, right? There's no one perfect thing. And I've noticed for myself that what works for me sometimes changes. Now, I will say that something huge changed for me, and this is a bit of a sidebar here, but I want to know if people want me to talk at all about small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I had that. I don't have it anymore. It's kind of all over the internet, and there's a lot of just ridiculous stuff, like just don't eat sugar, and it's ridiculous. If you have small intestine bacterial overgrowth, it's actually quite hard to treat, and I did treat mine with a product that was developed by a gastroenterologist in Texas by the name of Kenneth Brown. I'm going to see if I can't get a coupon code for people on my channel. Again, I don't do any affiliate links, so I wouldn't make any money off of it. Kenneth Brown will. But he's put together a product that he's not allowed to say it's for small intestine bacterial overgrowth, so he says bloating. In other countries, he's allowed to say it's for SIBO. But it's basically, it's an herbal product, and I used it for 2 months, the way he described to use in the beginning. He said it's at least 2 weeks. I did it for 2 months. I had a severe case. After 2 weeks, I tried to come off of it, and I started to feel sick again. I hadn't felt this good in years. I had just years and years of bloating to the extent that I thought that it was normal to feel uncomfortably full after a normal small meal. I just thought maybe this is middle age, menopause, whatever. And it got so bad in the more recent years that sometimes I would have bouts of just rolling on the floor in pain, and nobody could find anything. We thought, is it the gallbladder? Is it this? At CAT scans, nothing showed up, but I've learned that this is what it was. So I actually did a video on it a while ago, and I didn't put the video up online, so this is kind of backwards, but if people are interested in it, I will put the video up online. And I talked about my experience with the product that I used, and I used it for 2 months, and then I went down to a maintenance dose, which is like a third of the dose, so a couple pills a day. It's an herbal supplement again, so I take it, and I realized that I didn't know if when I was dabbling in keto that I sort of created this situation or exacerbated it, but that's really what brought it to my attention, that I was sick and not just, this was just me. But I think I wasn't feeding my gut microbiome enough. I think for me, back when I was kind of dabbling more in keto, I was not getting enough grain, carb, fiber to feed my gut microbiome, and it was just, I think it was just killing it off. I wasn't, maybe you can get enough with avocados and things, and maybe some people do fine. I didn't realize why anytime I had something like a grain or dairy, that I would get very, very sick. And now I'm able to eat really pretty much whatever I want and digest it. So I think my gut microbiome is healthier, and I'm able to eat things like fiber and grains. I don't eat gluten. I can't have gluten, but I do eat like buckwheat. I eat other kinds of grains. I eat brown rice in moderation, and I find that I'm much better off for it. So that's me, and that's partly discovering what works for you. But you know, I think if you just get really sick after having something and you've ruled out, you know, what might be the underlying causes of that, I do think it's worth considering whether you have small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and that's something to talk with your provider about and probably a specialist. But let me know if you wanted me to put that video up, because it was kind of the beginning of my understanding that I really didn't have a problem with fiber per se. I didn't have a problem with grains per se, but rather my gut microbiome wasn't fed and wasn't healthy enough to digest these things, and I had too much bacteria up in the small intestine. So I'm very, very grateful that I'm so much better. I mean, for months now, I've been better than I had been in years, my digestive tract anyway. So I wanted to share that with you guys. But yeah, well, let me know if this was helpful and if we want to start a little more discussion about it. It's kind of a broad video. Yeah, I'm still early. But anyway, I guess I'm going to sign off. But I'd like to talk more about nutrition and try to get back into that a little bit. And until next time, be well. Bye-bye.